was on the left again, and I said to him, I peered down with his face sort of squeezed in between our legs, and I said, Buckus, I think that's enough. And he looked up at me and he's like, just one more, please. But I honestly think that is the story, the most told story out of my entire repertoire.
Hello and welcome to the RugbyPass Offload with Max Lahiff and Ryan Wilson. Later on the show, we'll be joined by World Cup winning Springbok captain John Smit. First things first, Ryan, with his Zoolander pose, if you're listening rather than watching, but your match versus the Lions in Joburg cancelled. What was going on?
I'll tell you what was going on. A lot of shitting and puking. Holy hecker, boys. E. coli and neurovirus, is it? Oh,
norovirus.
Neuro. Boys, tell you what, it was out by fence. Everyone was absolutely wrecked. I obviously last week I had it, hadn't I? Remember when we came on here? Did I even mention it last week? I can't even remember.
No, you did. You mentioned it, yeah.
So I was lucky I had it at the beginning of the week, but I mean, obviously with all those injuries and stuff like that, with the flyboys out, and the boys that got there flew out, pretty much got there for 2 days and got sick. So they basically flew out to get ill to then fly home with the sickness bug. Oh, it was brutal, absolutely brutal. So yeah, we stayed in Joburg till the plan was always to stay in Durban, till Friday, and then make our way up to Joburg as late as possible. We went and trained Friday morning with a pretty makeshift squad. Like I'm talking, boys were pulling out morning of the team run. We were waking up, coming downstairs. So and so's got it. So and so's got it. I think 32 of the whole travelling party got it in the end. I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 of the boys that didn't. So yeah, it was brutal, absolutely brutal. But hey,
when you get
now, aren't we?
And when you get it, you're like fully. That's it.
Well, I know. We'll come on to what's his name, old Marco Massotti's tweet a bit later on. But I'm telling you now, you ain't playing with that because
it's coming out of you like lava, is it?
Yeah, you're running around with brown streaks running down the legs and chanda everywhere. It was painful as well.
It's running like reset. It's
E. coli's just floating around Durban like you wouldn't believe. Like I said, you couldn't swim in the sea, and then apparently E. coli sticks to shit, and basically all the shit's in the air and it's in the sea, and
it's everywhere.
It's bloody everywhere. Apparently, there's like the problem is we would go down to play in Durban, but there's reports and like of E. coli there. So
that's unbelievable. That's scenes. Wow.
So what happened was, I think, if I'm right, the rivers flooded in April, and then where all the rivers flooded and everyone's shit, some of the shit from the townships down, just everything ruined, all the sewage. So they basically just have a massive E. coli problem. But that wasn't only it; there was neurovirus as well. And as you heard, Ulster coming to town, they got exactly the same.
Oh wow!
You were boasting about seeing your old mucker Dwayne Vermeulen. Can you just admit you were the super spreader?
I was not the super spreader. I said I might go down, but I never messaged him then.
0.
Nah, I wasn't the super spreader. Don't worry. It just shows that how prevalent it was. That everyone got it. They all got it. We all got it. We played with half. No, I reckon there's a good 30% of the boys with it on game day, like in their guts. You know what I mean? But you're not quite right because it knocked me for 6. Playing 80 minutes the next day, I was a write-off. Like, because you obviously wreck your immune system, don't you, when you play 80 minutes of rugby? The next day, anything that's in there.
Lurking. It's over.
Not everyone was happy with that decision to cancel the games. Sharks owner Marco Massotti saying in a now deleted tweet, "Is this a joke? Must be. Is this a professional sports league? Has this happened in other professional sports leagues? Maybe darts, curling, or pickleball? Just give us the point." What would your response to that be, Ryan?
Hold on a minute. You can't just go knocking curling, darts, and pickleball. By the way, have you heard of pickleball? It looks amazing. But you can't go, 1, don't go slagging them off, and 2, Marco Mazzotti, you try having it coming out of both ends playing a rugby match. There's no chance. And also, when you're down to like one tight head, game's going to be pretty tricky. So, yeah. Interesting that he deleted it, though. I can't stand that. Don't delete it. Just back yourself.
Come on. Where's the conviction?
Screenshotted, mate. It's been screenshotted. But yeah, there's no way you're playing with that. I mean, I've played with sickness before. Back in the day, you used to get like a jag in the arse. Do you remember? Like, do you ever have that, Max? You get like an anti-sickness injection, which usually sorts you out. But I mean, doing that to 30 players isn't going to work.
What's that, like a steroid injection, like a cortisone?
It wasn't a steroid injection. I don't know what it was. Just I remember when
you don't know what it was.
Doc, give me an injection in the arse. Stop me being sick. It's amazing.
A lot of bad stories in sport have started like that. I don't know what it was. Next minute, I was bench pressing 250 kilos and running like a deer.
Mate, if there's one person that's not been on the roids, it's the old growth. The growth hasn't been injected here. I'm telling you that now. I've still got teeth that are together. See, it's just the gaps in the teeth you have to watch for. But nah, mate, you ain't playing with that. I'm telling you now.
Right, you went viral on TikTok. Quick one on your prank on arrival into the airport.
Oh, Maxie boy, did you see this?
No, which one was it? Oh no, the prank. Yeah, this year, yeah.
Oh, I'm telling you, I checked it on. Yeah, what did I put on TikTok? I'll put it on Instagram. Easiest prank in the book. I mean, I reckon this supersedes the dildo prank. I don't know if that was probably a few seasons ago. I told that story about where we used to strap the dildo to the water bottle and then hide it in someone's hand luggage. So when they went through security, they obviously had to remove the water bottle, and next to it is this big giant dildo. But this supersedes it easily, and it's such a simple prank. But the thing is, I'd slipped it in his hand luggage whilst we were on the plane. And I was going to try and set it off whilst he's getting his bag out. Imagine everyone trying to get up off the plane. And they're like,
oh, yeah.
I'm playing it. It wouldn't work. So I'm like, oh, no, what have I done? I've ruined it. So, mate, there's a lot of planning went into this. So we've got off. I said, oh, Murph, I think I might have put my speaker in your rucksack by accident. He was like, oh, that's weird. Pulled it out, gave it to me. Back on. As it comes around, carousel, boom, in his bag. And the best thing is waited just as we're walking out to the arrivals. You know, the old taxi signs, everyone waiting. And the best thing of it all is he was the last one out. So I'd waited with him and said, oh, where's the bag and that? Where's like the other team bags? So there wasn't many of the boys around. So that's even more embarrassing for him. But I'm telling you, that one needs to take off. That's too easy. Your boys go at many of those, Max, when you're traveling?
Nah, nothing like that really. But we do that.
In airports, do you?
No.
Airports. It's airports.
Airports are the best. And obviously the tube. That's always good because of how like close you are with everyone. That's always good crack. Is that you also did one with in the tube, didn't you, or on the train? Or is that the same one?
Oh yeah, but that's the one where it's like
Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
All right. Yeah. That one cracked me up. Just seeing everyone's face, just know exactly what was going down, like instantly.
But have you watched this one yet? If you haven't watched it, it's him coming out with his bag, mate. It couldn't have worked any better. But next time I'm zip tying the old zips together so you can't get it out, because that would be. I reckon I'd just launch my bag and walk off. Fucking don't. I'm done.
Come on.
Yeah.
This is going to make it, but we were at a presser at the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, and it was a big one for a guy called Sean White, who's like a snowboard. He's like a sort of legend snowboarder, and Chloe Kim, who's like a female snowboard legend. And so the whole place was packed. This journalist comes in late, sits down in the middle of the packed auditorium. He's just in front of us, pulls up his laptop. He obviously had a Sherman tank the night before, finished, closed the laptop, not thinking, opens it up. Genuinely, it just starts going, and no, you can't see, there's no video on it, but the sound just starts pumping out. And the whole auditorium looks at this lad. He's now in the middle, right? So he can't get back out. He puts the laptop down and just sits there, not looking at anyone, doesn't take any notes. So,
oh my God.
Let's move on to the pitch. Some corking matches in the Prem. Saracens staying unbeaten thanks to Alex Goods, sort of at the death pen to win away at the Chiefs. Let's start with that mildly moronic Owen Farrell deliberate trip and yellow card on our friend of the show, Jack Noel. Maxie, is that the least subtle bit of foul play you've ever witnessed?
It's not the least subtle, but it wasn't exactly, it wasn't exactly cloak and dagger stuff, was it? Just head got a bit hot, trying to be good off the ball. almost too competitive off the ball, and yeah, sometimes your foot will involuntarily move into the way of the ball carrier and trips their ball carrier. Yeah, so yeah, not great, but it happens.
Oh, do you know what made me laugh, Matt? Is there's people on Twitter going, "Oh, that's a red card." What?
Yeah, I know.
What?
Yellow.
Hold on a minute. Hold on. And like, I thought it was quite funny. Like,
Yeah,
I'll be honest, I've tripped people up.
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
But the thing is, they weren't the ball carrier, so it's like, you know, in a kick chase or something, just a little flick of the heels, right?
Exactly.
And laughing at them. And I've done it before. What am I going to get red carded for that?
Oh
It's
yeah,
not
like in the mall, you got geezers like doing the old judo or chop. See you later. You know what I mean? It happens all the time. But yeah, it was just done in such a sort of visual way, right there. Just
it was too obvious.
Let's talk about that. The main performance from a number 10 over the weekend. Incredible standout man of the match display by Marcus Smith, helping his Quins team beat informed side Sale Sharks by scoring 24 points in that 29-13 victory. Max, just relay to us how magical this man is.
Well, I mean, we've sung his praises rhythmically on this podcast many a time. Yeah, he's Harry Houdini. Now you see me, now you don't. He's got hands like a heart surgeon. He's a gifted individual, an egg whisperer of the highest renown. Yeah, and when he's on, he's very on. But I'm sure Big Rye would be like, nah, Team Finn all day. They're similar sort of players, though. I think they sort of got that attacking flair, the total rugby mentality. So, but yeah, it is unreal how he, like, the ages that he's playing at the sort of rugby at. He's like 23, isn't he?
And that was his 100th Premier League game.
Exactly. Mental.
Premier League, Premiership. What are we? Football?
I hope he doesn't burn out though. Like he gets too good at rugby, and then he's just like, all right, I'm done now. It's like, you know, like it can happen. I reckon it can happen. I've completed it. I'm too good now. Like that's the levels we're talking with, like in terms of the ceiling right now.
That's the youngest person to ever get 100 games in the Premiership. Am I right?
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it? Pretty impressive.
At 10 as well, like 10's yeah. Well, I've got a lot of insight about it.
10 is such an easy, cushy ride. If you don't want to take it into contact, you pass it. You know what I mean? If you just kick it.
But wait, right. But if you're playing, nah, man, you've got to look at a lot of stuff. Like if I would say what you're saying is good for tight ends. You know, once you've just got it down in the scrum, when you're like relatively good enough, the rest of it, like coaches will turn a blind eye on some stuff about your play. Whereas when you're 10, you need to know everything. Don't you think? I feel like the influence you have on attack.
100%. But what I'm saying is, but once you've got all that, you don't have to I'm sorry, I'm more talking about your body.
Right. Yeah. Sorry.
Playing 500 games and he's in better nick than me after 10 because you should.
Yes, this is true. But he's not exactly he's not a coward round contact. He's not a matador. He throws himself into the spurs.
Yeah, he does, to be fair.
Yeah.
He loves to be a 10.
Imagine if we had the nous, the appropriate like rugby IQ to play 10 would be delicious. And
I reckon I could play 12. I'm telling you now, I could play 12.
Yeah, if we went back in time.
No, right now.
Right now, you reckon you could get it done? Mate, I reckon you would have your mind melted in set piece line out there.
No, I've been out there. I did it a couple of weeks ago against...
Bruv.
I did it against the Sharks, mate, last week. Because when you're at 8, you end up out there all the time, just diving into people's knees and shins. Easy. I'll be maybe a 12 that defends at 1 then, at first. You know what I mean?
Interesting. I like it. I like the ambition. I'm not sure about the actual real world application of said feat.
I've got a good boot on me as well.
Okay.
Yeah, good boot, good grubber.
I think Franco listens to this podcast and you're just like doing your like CV for him?
Mate, we go 6-2 split all the time now. We only ever go 6-2 split. So I'm pretty much covered for the backs after those two get on.
What do you reckon the hardest position is actually?
The hardest position? Prop.
Yeah.
Worst position in the world.
Yeah, but like, yeah, okay.
Mate, you get your head shoved into someone else's head while someone's shoving up your ass, ramming together. You got to hold that scrum up, which is the hardest thing on earth. And then when you come out of it, you got people shouting at you, hurry up, go over there. You're blind. I feel so sorry for you boys. I try and help our props. I'm like, by the way, I'm not being a twat. I'm just trying to help you. I'm like, come on, go, keep going, keep going. I'm one of those guys that tries to give you a bit of energy. You know what I mean? But then you've got Max like, fucking hurry up, get around the corner. You're like, well, don't talk to him like that. Do you know what he's just been through over there? Do you know what he's just been through in that scrum? No, you don't. And you never will know. So relax and stop shouting at him. Pisses me off.
It's funny when people are like, if I had to play prop, I'd retire. I'm just like, oh. How did I hear that? It's just sad. I'm like, oh.
You boys have got it so hard. Today at training, up 3:30, I got back yesterday, back in at 8 o'clock this morning training. I look up, we're doing weights. We're going out to do mauls, scrums, line-outs, the lot. Little bit of contact as well. I look over, the backs are inside on the track playing football, tennis, and practicing their bridge passes.
Oh,
and it's almost like they did it in front of us to really fucking rub it in. It's a disgrace, absolute disgrace.
Right. Speaking of controversy, the big one, right? Finn Russell being left out of Scotland's squad for the Autumn Nations Cup, and also your pal Stuart Hogg stripped as captain. But let's start with Finn. Townsend saying it's form and consistency related. No disrespect, hang on, to your pal Ross Thompson at Glasgow, who's been picked despite, I think he's only played, 20 minutes of rugby this season. Finn's been playing pretty well for Racing. At least he's been pretty consistent. Isn't this just like calling Finn, Scotland fans, rugby public as a whole, just a bunch of idiots? Here's total bollocks. Eat that, you knobheads.
I'm not sure I put it like that exactly, but
articulately put, yeah.
But yeah, it's everyone sees through it, don't they? I mean, listen, the issue there is Ross Thompson is always going to play. Is always going to play this week because none of the foreign-based players can play the first game against Australia. So Ross is in there for that game. So take him out of the equation. Adam Hastings, to be fair, he's been tearing it up down the Premiership, playing bloody well, hasn't he? So he's due his spot all day long. He's going to be in that squad, and I think he's definitely merited that. But when you're talking about one of the best players in the world, and even on a shit day, you've got him in there, haven't you? You're not leaving him out. So the talk of form and stuff, it was I don't know. I would have stayed away from that. And you know, they've obviously had their spats before, and there's not the best relationship there. You thought things were fixed, but clearly there's other things going on.
Something afoot there, isn't there? Some fruitiness.
Definitely. Yeah. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. I don't know. I've got some other theories behind it, but I keep them to myself at the moment.
Oh, very intriguing. You can't
have another theory.
I wouldn't say theories. I'd say if you then move on to the captaincy side of things.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't know. It's a big call. I've played with Hoggy for a long time, and he's a fucking passionate bloke, especially for his country. I would carry on having him as captain. So you've got Jamie Ritchie then stepping as captain as his first ever Autumn Test. You've got then two very big characters who, if they're not on your side. So I don't know, maybe there's a worry about that, letting Jamie Ritchie step in as captain, Hoggy supporting him a bit. I don't know, boys. I'm amazed that you've got one of the best 10s in the world, and we always talk about it, sat back in Paris, not involved.
Would you have preferred Townsend to have said, "Look, I don't like Finn, and I'm the guy who picks the team," and then no one can argue with that?
Nah, because I don't think it's the fact that he doesn't like Finn. All right, there's got to be something else. There's got to be something else there. I don't know. I think there's maybe some sort of a tactic around it. I think maybe there's got to be something to do with the Autumn Test. He's thinking, let's let other people shine, see what happens, and then
it could just be like that.
We'll bring him back in because you got Blair Kinghorn, who I think's going to be out and out starting. I'd have Adam Hastings starting out of that squad, but you've got Blair Kinghorn in there, who I think Tooney will choose to start all the tests.
It could be like what John Smit said, like deflating some of the big dogs, giving them a bit of a breather, and then have them raring for Six Nations, etc.
But then you would have thought he would have come out and said that.
Yeah, but doesn't.
There's an easy excuse there as well. Is Finn's missus is due to give birth in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, there were so many scapegoats, and he was just like, out of form.
Exactly.
He's garbage. What? He's doing all
And
right.
here we are going in on him saying, "Oh no," but honesty is not the best policy. But we can't see the honesty in the form thing, can we?
No, exactly. Devious.
Ryan, why don't we ask a World Cup winning captain who led his country to a series win over the British and Irish Lions, whether he wouldn't just pick Finn Russell for Scotland, but would pick him actually for South Africa?
Cue John.
Well, we are now delighted to be joined by World Cup winning Springbok captain and former CEO of the Sharks, John Smit. John, you're joining us from Paris, where I believe you partied with every single one of the World Cup winning captains.
Yeah, just a standard weekend, really.
Who was the best on the sauce?
Yeah, I must say it was quite responsible, very mature behaviour, which I was very surprised about. But everyone was home back at the hotel by 1 a.m. So you'd be very disappointed to hear there was no Rasmus.
Well, let's crack it, John. You're obviously a Sharks legend. Like current boss Marco Massotti, were you disappointed to see the weak Northern Hemisphere boys pull out of the match on Saturday due to having the shits?
The trouble is there's so much going around, like you just don't know. And look, it's a pain in the ass for us as a franchise to be able to, yeah, exactly. And we're not the ones with the runny tummies, but it is a pain in the ass to be able to reschedule. And it's just difficult because we had all our box. There was a big day planned, but you're sick. It is life, really. So I don't think I'm pretty sure both those teams wanted to play. It does bugger up things going forward, and it's already a congested year. So it's a disaster for the Sharks. They had a massive day planned, but there's nothing you can do.
Trust me, John, I was over there, and I'm telling you, when it's coming out of both ends, there's no. It wasn't a pretty sight. You did not want to see 30 men on the field doing that, because it was a horrible sight in the hotel, let alone on a rugby field.
No, I can tell you right now, that's probably the one thing that's more dangerous than man flu when it comes out of both sides.
John, I'm guessing the week before you admired up close the wonderful work of our very own Ryan Wilson matching Ebenezer there.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's some. I'm part of the world panel that's picking the world team of the year, and I mean, those are names that are popping up all the time. So it's quite a tough year to pick a sort of a world 15. There's so many great players, and there's quite a lot of competition among some of the positions. There are some positions that sort of are pretty basic, but second row is pretty contested.
John, tell me this: how it was? Am I right in saying Sia was over at this thing in France at the weekend?
He was, yes.
So he just jumps on a jet, flies over, does that, and then flies back for his rugby match. I don't know, does it?
Living La Vida Loca, rock star.
Isn't he? Isn't he? He must be flying business, or at least first. Actually, thinking about it.
If I know Sia, they've probably booked out the entire business class lounge for him. So no, he's good. And it took some convincing to get him out to run around Paris, just in between the odd night out. So he's actually not going back. He's going to stay in France and join up with the squad when they come to the Northern Hemisphere for the tour. So while all the boys are hard at work, he's here razzmatazzing with the captains and in Paris. But he says he's going to go stay with Cheslin and he'll train really hard there, is what he told me. So I'll take that as a given.
Yeah, we'll see how he performs. We'll be able to work out how many beers he's had by the way he plays.
No, it doesn't drink, so not one beer in the last 3 days. I know. It's probably why we ended up coming home so early.
Fair. John, when you're picking the World 15, what's the main criteria? Do you do that a lot off stats, or how do you guys decide that?
There's I think there's 8 of us on the panel, and we basically send in our version of our team, and then we see who's got the most, which names got the most votes. And there's some clear-cut ones, and then the ones that are tight, we sort of debate, and then stats come in, and Ugo Monya has just joined us as well. So he sort of brings in quite a lot of stats into the equation as well. So as surprising as it may sound, there is a reasonable amount of work that goes into it. But it's a terrible task. I mean, every year, like if you're South African and you don't pick 15 South Africans, I get lambasted on social media by the South Africans, and so it's a very tricky panel to be a part of and remain neutral in Switzerland, so to speak.
Yeah, I bet it's a thankless job. I'll tell you what not to do. Don't listen to mine and Max's teams. And you're right.
Absolutely.
Are you purely based on the stats? It has to be.
Oh, yeah.
Moneyball sort of thing.
Full Moneyball, yeah.
Oh.
We've got an algorithm and everything. Yeah.
The old Arsene Wenger manager style.
Exactly. Buy
cheap, sell high, never get into the top four.
That's how they creep into their own 15s every time.
Well, someone's got to do it.
John, before we get into your wonderful career, a quick word on the current Springbok situation, finishing second in the championship this year, but they seem to be struggling to find sort of starting fly half. Who would you pick for the number 10 shirt?
Oh, fly half is probably our biggest risk factor going into the World Cup next year. I mean, Andre certainly has established himself as the starting fly half, but he has had a haphazard season from an injury point of view. There are a few options. For me, I guess the top of the list and the guy that's done enough, certainly from a fullback point of view, is Damian Willemse. He played a big part of his career at 10, and he just seems to have settled at fullback and gotten a lot of sort of confidence. And I think with that confidence that he really played well this international season during the June and July gap. I would probably give him the responsibility if Andre wasn't prepared. Hussein's back in the mix, but he's also just come off a massive injury as well, and it's almost like bad timing. He sort of needs to settle into a couple of months of URC and some touring and some traveling and some just getting a bit of mileage behind his sort of jersey. But we are limited. I mean, it's probably the biggest headache, and it's almost too late to bloody youngster. There's a Hendrickse, the Lions fly half. He's got a real future as well, but it's almost too late to give a youngster a go this sort of close up to a World Cup.
Here's a question for you. If you had Finn Russell to pick, would you put him in?
I love Finn Russell. Yeah. He's a good player. I thought we would have had well, not that it was an easy time. We would have had a trickier time in the Lions series if he'd played more at 10. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's too many teams who wouldn't give Finn Russell a go in their starting lineup.
Except for Scotland.
He needs to find some South African ancestry. That's what he's got to do. There's got to be a Fundamava somewhere in Finn Russell's line.
Too right. Yeah.
With that in mind, John, what are your thoughts going into the Autumn Nation series and then on to the World Cup?
Look, it's a pretty big tour for South Africa. We've got France, England, and Ireland, and with the sort of Italy in between there as well. So it's a big month, and there's a lot sort of riding on it. So I think the French are certainly going to send a big team, and they were starting lineup, and it looks like South Africa is going to send as best as they can, depending on injuries. It's always a tricky time because if it was me and I was managing that team, I think as a South African, I'd leave a few key guys behind and sort of deflate the sort of the magnitude of these tests, just because South Africa really they really are better at World Cups than they are sort of individual tours, and I think you'll read a lot into who those teams are that are going to be the toughest to beat at World Cup, because there's probably 5 or 6 that on the day can beat anyone, but it's about how many of those 5 or 6 can do 7 weeks in a row. So maybe I'm just too much of a gambling man, but I think that this team has got a good enough squad, has played well enough in the 3.5 years in between World Cups to be able to go to a World Cup and be one of the favorites, definitely not the favorite, but one of the favorites to be able to go the 7 weeks. But I've got a feeling it's going to be full volume for all 4 weeks. So it'll be interesting to see how we fare. We haven't played this French team. We've had a few cracks at the English side, and we haven't had a lot of contact with the French, and certainly not a lot with the Irish either. So it's going to be interesting to see how we fare away from home against these World Cup contenders.
Sort of minimum success rate for you across the Autumn Nations?
Yeah. Look, for me, South Africa is like can be iffy in between World Cups, and I was part of a generation like that as well. You know, we are unbelievably good at not peaking at the wrong time. We really are sort of haphazard in between World Cups, and it's going to be. I think that the way they played, they put together an unbelievable performance against the All Blacks, and I do think there was a fair amount of issues in the team where they also had. I mean, it wasn't reported on, but they also had a bit of a bug going through their team the week before the second test in Joburg. So I reckon they did it right. I think they're probably the only game they really let themselves down on was that the Australian loss. But you know, I don't think they saw that coming, so probably a little bit complacent. But this was probably a championship for them to win. It's like, yeah, they came second by sort of a millimeter, but it was probably one they should have betted down early.
You went to Pretoria Boys High School, the same school as Elon Musk and Oscar Pistorius. We're talking about was roughly what early 90s, shall we say, or late 90s, not to put too much of an age on you. You played for 3 years. I think we can only imagine it was a pretty brutal initiation for a 16-year-old to go through.
I remember my first game, actually. I was 15. I hadn't turned 16 yet. And we were playing against Jeppy, which is it's actually the school that Jake's from and the school that he coached. And it was his last year of being coach of Jeppy Boys High. And I was up against this Greek guy, but he was like 20 years old. I think he was having his third go at finishing his final year of school. And he had this, I think he'd probably shaved in the morning, but the growth had been so substantial by the time we played at 3 o'clock. I had a roasty on my cheek as a 15-year-old baby. That was probably the biggest injury of the game, was having to scrum against him and get him my face sandpapered by his 20-year-old Greek beard. But yeah, it was a pretty cool time to be at schoolboy level. I was a pretty big 15-year-old, so probably 108 kilos when I was 15. So that's probably why I snuck into the team a little bit earlier than most.
Did you come across Elon Musk then?
No, I finished there in 96. He probably finished the late 80s, 89, 90. That's probably where he finished. He must be just touching 50. So I missed Elon Musk. Otherwise, we definitely would have been best friends.
Yeah, too right.
Always time.
Just waiting for my chance, guys.
No, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The whole world's in awe of the level of schoolboy rugby in South Africa. For those who don't know how good it is, would you say that the best team could potentially compete against certain professional outfits?
No, look, I think this sort of size is an issue, and the strength. I mean, the strength training at school level isn't what it is in the professional game, but our schoolboy game is phenomenally strong, and I think it's purely because it's run by itself. It's run by old boys and that fund the school and help with building programs. I mean, there's some schools that have got gyms that are better than franchise teams that we've got in South Africa. You know, there's a lot of interest and there's a lot of like pride around being an old boy of a school that meant a lot to you. And so there's a lot of giving back to the schools, and it doesn't matter what you do as a school in South Africa. If you want to be regarded as a great school, your first team's got to be in the top 10, top 20. So sometimes I think it gets a bit much though. There's a lot of money put in and a lot of pressure that goes into these kids, and they're spending the last 2 years of 17, 18-year-olds really sort of almost performing like a professional. They've got biokineticists, they've got S&C trainers, they've got all sorts of things. So it's probably gotten a bit too serious for me. I take Pretoria Boys as an example. We were comfortably always in the top 20, but we don't do bursaries and we don't sort of buy players from junior school. We just, whoever comes, and whoever gets coached, they try and coach them to the best that they can. But we don't give rugby bursaries and we don't sort of buy players, and we don't even get close to the top 20. We're in a different league. It's almost like you need to spend money. It's almost professional, from a big school's point of view.
You signed for the Sharks out of your university, and then a couple of years later, in 2000, you made your debut for the Springboks in a thumping victory over Canada. Who had the pleasure of caning you that day?
I was initiated by the one and only Marc Edwards. So, yeah, we were busy. It actually happened outside at the airport, outside the plane, and we had this little chart. And obviously there were other people on the plane, and they saw this circle being made, and and I can only imagine what those those fans or people on the plane must have thought. But yeah, Mark gave me my 3 lashings to welcome me into the family. Jeez, like it was some beating, I must say.
On the back or on the arse?
Jeez, this is not the Vikings, but it was, and it's just the normal hiding on the arse.
Oh, just really arse. And
Yeah.
do you have to remove your pants, or is it? I'm just trying to picture you with the arse hanging out whilst everyone's on the plane waiting.
We've only ever been told to take our clothes off once, and that was at Kampstaldraad before the 2003 World Cup.
Oh, that story. Van Routenbach told me about that. Mate, that sounds horrific.
That was an interesting 3 days. Yeah, but no, it's 3 lashes. It's more sort of it's a passing on. So Dr. Craven used to have a dog called Bliksem, and in South Africa, the word Bliksem means hit. And so you respond to the 3 shots by repeating the word Bliksem, which is a sort of a respect to Doc Craven through the ages. So that's sort of where it goes. The intention is not to actually damage the person. It's really just a passing on. So no Springboks were harmed in the making of that movie. Well, not many.
I can't imagine Eben's too easy on the cane.
No, look, a lot of guys. So you've got to be quite senior to be able to pass that on. There certainly are some who enjoy it more than others. We never gave Buckies that opportunity.
No, yeah. You imagine turning around and he's got it. Oh man, you'd be panicking.
Yeah,
John, Skullberger alluded to it a couple of weeks ago when he was on the pod. Just give us a bit more flavour of that Stoltrat military camp that you went on.
Like most bizarre rugby experience I reckon I've had in my career. I mean, it must have been even more so for Skullberger. He was 19, just out of school. I mean, he got told that he had to shave his head, and we got on this camp, and we were blindfolded as we got closer to this secret location, which is this military camp. Pair of shorts, shirt, a hat, and a gum guard. They said take a gum guard. The gum guard was for these. We got paired with guys sort of in our position, so like your competition in the squad kind of thing. So Christo Besanet was one of the props at the stage, and so I got paired with Christo. It was like a slow motion slugfest, but you had 2 or 3 minutes in this sort of human ring, and I mean that was just one of the things. And then we sat in this dam. It was ice cold. I mean, Stefan Blanche, he turned purple at one stage, honestly. The saving grace there was that the guys doing the camp, the sort of recce's or the task force guys, they were having a barbecue next to this dam while we were shivering our balls off, and you could smell the meat and the sausage, and one of them dropped a coal, and so a fire started to break out. So it was like, in the instant they said, "Yeah, get out, come help us." I mean, we would have dived on the fire. That's how cold we were. So, like all of us out of the dam, like stomping like the fire out. And in the back of my eye, I see Ashwin Willemse, who I realized in that day was a lot more street smart than the rest of us. He let everyone go towards the fire, and he went straight to the barbecue, grabbed a piece of meat, made himself a little hot dog, and charred a hot dog in between us trying to put the fire out. So, yeah, I was one of the fools trying to put the fire out. I should have got myself a piece of meat.
And why did you end up naked there?
Well, they wanted our clothes to be dry, so they forced us into this. I mean, the task was we only had to be in the dam for as long as it took us to pump balls up full of water, which is an impossible task. I mean, we realized it was never going to work, so we then just sat in the dam waiting for them to decide how long they were going to let us be there. But look, it wasn't some kind of exotic dancing around a fire naked kind of thing. It was really us trying to keep our clothes dry.
Right, okay.
John, sorry. Back to that camp.
Yeah.
Did you guys have to like sleep in like a room, like all butt naked, and like were huddled together to keep warm?
Well, there was a room. We didn't have to. Well, we weren't allowed to sleep, so we didn't.
Well, they gave you like an hour of sleep, didn't they, or something?
They gave. So this particular room was actually they dug a hole in the ground, and we had to crawl. So we had to, again, it's the middle of the night, cold as anything. And again, naked into this hole, crawl through, can't see anything, sit in this hole. And then next thing, another one comes. And so they just sent guys in as sort of one after the other. Now we're sitting in this black hole. I promise you can't see your hand in front of your face. And it's quite confusing because you haven't really been told what's going on. And all of a sudden, like the haka starts playing over a speaker somewhere. We hear the haka outside. I mean, and then obviously no one says anything. We don't know what the hell's going on. And then because we don't respond to the haka, I'm not quite sure what we're supposed to do. This big black plastic covering gets removed, and they toss cold water over us. Not that we're already freezing. And that happened for a good part of 2 hours. Yeah, I mean, I promise you, I can tell you stories, and none of them will make any sense. This is my wife, by the way. This is her debut as a podcaster. But she's packing our bags because we're about to get onto a flight.
Also, were you given live chickens to eat and butcher?
Yeah. So we first had to, well, not all of us. We had a tug of war competition, and guess who won the tug of war? That guy. So easy. You just got to. It's all about the lean and the you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, well, not one of those let go of the rope and then pull it. That's my tactic.
No, that's only those are the small guys. They got to make tricks. I know we tug of war, and our team won, and so we got given this box of dinner, and it was 2 chickens, live chickens. So we had to obviously kill the chicken to eat the chicken, and they gave the first chicken to Joe Fanicke, who, as I'm sure you can see, he's more on the sort of flower power vibe and vegan side than he is. I mean, if you asked at the time, I think if you'd asked Joe where chicken came from, he might have said KFC. I mean, he had absolutely no clue about what to do with this chicken, and so the chicken. It wasn't a short death, but eventually some of the farmers stepped in, and we dealt with the chickens, and then tried to cook them. But 2 chickens for 30 guys, it was some night. I promise you, we can make this whole podcast about crazy things that happen at Staldra.
Okay, all right. Final story. I remember hearing about this place, and I wanted to confirm this. Did they fire shots at you in the dam?
I really want to say no, but they did. We were planning it. I'm pretty sure. I mean, these were trained soldiers. I mean, if they wanted to shoot you, they would shoot you. So I'm pretty sure they aimed to miss. But I mean, we were actually planning this coup to get we like set enough. We were like, and we got a word in Afrikaans called gatvol, where you're up to here. You can't take it anymore. And I mean, I think Stefan de Blanche would have become an icicle. He would have been a live popsicle. So we started walking out of the water in this revolution. And there were just 1 or 2 guys, stragglers, that weren't quite, hadn't quite signed the indemnity. And when they saw that there was sort of a break in the camp, then we had a few shots fired. And look, nothing gets you back into an ice cold dam than a few 9mm shots.
At what point are you like, hold on, this is a rugby camp? And then
it's mental, isn't it? How mental is that, right?
Look, I can remember that 3 days like it happened yesterday, like a movie. But I cannot tell you one move that we planned. Yeah. I don't remember one back move, forward. I don't remember that. I mean, that just shows sort of why we over excelled and got kicked out in the quarterfinals by the All Blacks. But I mean, we did absolutely nowhere near enough rugby preparation. But we had this 3-day camp that was very memorable.
But in a weird way, John, because I always say we always moan when we get sent on these camps, and that brings back memories of Font Rameau with Vern Cotter for me. He took us up altitude, and we did the similar thing, but with bunny rabbits. And honestly, you dread all these things, but some of the stories you get out of them, they're actually like, boys, this is worth it, because some of the stories you can tell and the memories.
We dine out on Staldra all the time, and so a lot of people ask me if I regret it. I love the fact that we did it, because you've got such a cool comparative base to. I mean, I'll tell you the one thing. I learned a lot about myself, a lot about my teammates, and you sort of do get to see where someone, how someone responds under pressure. You haven't eaten, you haven't really had a lot of sleep, and so life can get tough, and you get grumpy pretty easy, you know. So I learned a lot about myself, and I was always, I mean, as a big boy, I hated the fitness sessions and the bleep tests. From that day on, I never really stressed about a fitness camp or day ever again, because I realized there's no ways they could make it harder than that 3 days. You know, so you're right. We do. I mean, we were together 2 weekends ago. We must have spent 2 hours rehashing these crazy stories from Staldraad. So yeah, do we have a highlight from the 03 World Cup? Yeah, 3 days. 3 days of being semi-naked and underfed.
Well, let's fast forward to the 2007 World Cup, obviously leading your country to victory. We had Matt Stevens on here, and he told us about his memories of getting beaten up by Bakkies Botha, and he somewhat blamed it on your pre-match speech really getting everyone riled up. What's your recollection of how the events unfolded?
Sauce did take a proper beating, I must say. And I know Sauce well. He's such a good friend, but he really... Look, obviously it's pretty easy to get South Africans riled up against the English. I mean, there's all sorts of history, and you've got the Afrikaners, you've got a whole bunch of guys that are who still remember their grandmothers and being held prisoners of war. So there's a lot of touch points that can get an Afrikaans guy pretty angry, and you don't need it. You know, it doesn't take a lot of effort. So motivating a Springbok team against the English has always been pretty easy, and it's sort of one of those things where I always tried to wait for Bakkies to go to the physio or go to the toilet when I really got the guys G'd up, because sometimes he would accelerate a little bit faster than others. He would just get a little bit too excited. So I had to really monitor where Bakkies was in the room when I started, getting guys a bit G'd up and sort of my narrative. But I mean, nothing about that was planned. But I think what happened is Bakkies had come to that week and said, how can this guy play for England? How can he play for the Queen if he's born in South Africa, he went to school in South Africa? So I said, no, his grandfather's got a passport, his ancestry, and I explained, said 3 years and blah, blah, blah. But I thought I'd explained it pretty well, but he hadn't quite understood that. So he believed that this guy was a traitor. He's playing for the Queen, and he needed to be taught a lesson. And I promise you, I had no clue, but I knew there was trouble in the first scrum, because Bakkies is always on a tight head, and he slipped over to the loose head, and he has to slip to the loose head to release his right arm to obviously inflict the discipline that Matt Stevens required. And when he's on the left, I know that I need to just keep my head a little bit to the right as much as possible, just in case his aim isn't good. But he hit him plumb. First time, like, honestly, little smiley emoji here, popped right open, and off he went, got 14 stitches. Came back, and I was like, fair play, guys, back. First scrum, he's back. Bakkies is on the left. His aim wasn't as good. He only popped 10 of the 14 stitches. And then as he came back for the second time, it was just after halftime, and I thought, surely this is enough. And Bakkies was on the left again, and I said to him, I peered down with his face sort of squeezed in between our legs, and I said, Bakkies, I think that's enough. And he looked up at me and he's like, just one more, please. But I honestly think that is the most told story out of my entire repertoire. Everywhere I go, I think it's sort of, there can't be too many people that haven't heard that story.
Very good.
And it's probably better to be on Bakkies' team if you want to stay safe. I think that's pretty sure. But you found out the hard way when you played against the Bulls, right? Yeah,
2007. Sharks versus Bulls, like 3-4 months out from a World Cup. And I get smashed in the face, and like who's that? And Bakkies said, sorry, Captain, it was me. And then he runs past me on the way to the rack, taps me on the bum and says, it's my job. Luckily, he didn't pop my eye open. So I'm grateful for that.
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah, you don't see any of that. Razzle dazzle these days.
You see Owen Farrell tripping up Jack Noel. That's about as dangerous as it gets.
Yeah. And the odd sort of handbag and the grabbing of collars, that's become a big thing. And you sort of the old angry eyes and a grab a collar, and that's about as hectic as it gets these days.
Yeah. Obviously, as captain, you had the honour of lifting the trophy and being the figurehead of the campaign. You also got to meet Nelson Mandela on several occasions. Can you tell us how incredible he was as a man?
I was very fortunate to meet Madiba, and he was good to us as a sporting brand. I mean, there was a massive amount of pressure for when South Africa became a democracy in '94, and he was selected as president. there was a big call to abolish the Springboks, the Springbok emblem, because it represented an era of whites only teams, and so there was a lot of noise, and a lot of people don't know this, but Madiba actually he campaigned around the country wearing a Springbok hat, and he would be getting booed by his own people, and then explained to the masses how important it was to use rugby that in the past represented such a sort of an apartheid era, but use it as a tool to unite. And so if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be the Springboks still to this day. So he played a role there. And then with our teams, I mean, he was like the magic token. When you really needed to win, you sort of rolled out Madiba and got him to come shake hands, and everyone would sort of be starry-eyed. And the one test, he was sickly, so he couldn't come out. So they had him at his park in a golf cart. And our team came around the golf cart, and he was giving us, and he's just got such a great sense of humor, and he's got this calming effect, and he was giving us a story, and Georgie Gregan and then his boys came up the sort of ramp, and they obviously this commotion, we're blocking and a bit frustrated, and I never forget, I saw George sort of peering over, see Madiba, and I think he just rolled his eyes, realizing, oh, we're going to get it again today. So he was incredible. I mean, one of my encounters with him was, I had my first child. Emma was born 2006, and I was on my way to training, and I got this phone call, and they said, "Will you hold for Mr. Nelson Mandela?" And like in the morning, and I'm like thinking, this is definitely a prank call from Butchie or someone. And so I'm holding, and the next thing, Nelson comes on the line and says, John, I just want to say congratulations. This is on your birth of your daughter. Like, I mean, I don't know, how does this guy even know that I've had a child, you know? And I was like, I honestly still thought I was being pranked. And then he said, but remember, today is the day you start to realize what stress is now that you have a daughter. And he's too right, cheapers. Forget World Cup finals. Have a couple of daughters. That'll give you some stress.
Tell me about it.
Does she know that story?
She does. Yeah. She's got a cup. She got a picture of, you know, that flings the chips. I mean, we had the Webb Ellis trophy in our room for the tour, and she obviously was with us, and she was being a menace. So my wife dropped a bag of fling chips into the Webb Ellis trophy, and she sat happily eating flings out of the William Webb Ellis trophy.
How cool is that?
Let's move on then to 2008. You were legally taken out by Brad Form, ripping a groin in the process, if I remember rightly. But you did get your own back the next year with a monster smash on him. How good did that feel?
You see, Brad is such a good man. I mean, I don't know if you've had the privilege of meeting him, but he's a mean guy on the field, and he's got this soft, gentle voice, and off the field, he's just a legend of a guy. Look, there aren't too, like, to be fair, I wasn't exactly the world's most fearsome tackler, but catching him after that was pretty cool. And also because the only reason I was able to catch him is because they took a quick throw. I would never catch someone by surprise on a tackle like that. So the rugby gods were looking after me and giving me my opportunity to respond. And I take it as karma, because look, to be fair, when he dumped me, I might have been pulling a little Sean Fitzpatrick with a finger in the ear. I might have. It's possible. And he did snap. So I was expecting something. I just wasn't expecting him to dump 120 kilos up and down. So I realized he was stronger than I expected.
You then obviously led your side to the Tri Nations victory and a Lions series victory in that year. Which team was better, the 09 or the 07 side?
09, without a doubt. By that stage, we'd refined so many things. We had such a routine. We had a resilience around how to deal with adversity on the field, and it really was a special time. We were a difficult team to beat in 09. Bearing in mind, you know, that was a strong Lions side, and those first two tests, I mean, especially the second one, could have gone any way. So probably was the kind of test matches that should have gone to the wire, had it not been for that opportunity sort of to kick. So again, thank you, Ronan. I appreciate that. We've got to just put that out there. But from there to win the Lions series, and then I don't think there's been too many teams that have been able to beat the All Blacks 3 times in a row. So we beat them twice at home and then away in Hamilton, and that was. I mean, the best story about that is, we were based in Brisbane on the Gold Coast. I mean, everyone's been to the Surfers Paradise. It's nice. I mean, I love New Zealand, I love Australia, but Surfers Paradise, the Gold Coast, pretty much beats a lot of places in the world. And we had to choose between Gold Coast or Hamilton. So obviously we chose Gold Coast, and we were going to come in on the Thursday, but we got such grief from the media. Peter took all the heat, and he sort of fielded the media, but it was they weren't happy. We arrived Thursday in Hamilton before the Test match, and the mayor's there with a book in his hand of things to do in Hamilton, because Peter had said there's nothing to do in Hamilton, so we're going to stay in the Gold Coast. That obviously didn't go down well with the locals and the mayor. So we had this huge barrage of media and politicians. And anyway, cut a long story short, we were not popular, and they were desperate to beat us, and we managed to win that game. And afterwards, I was coming down into the presser with Peter de Villiers, and he actually called all the New Zealand press together beforehand, and I thought, oh, here we go, because he was a soundbite waiting to happen as well. So I thought, here it comes, and he called the guys and he said, look, I really do have to apologize. And they sort of came in closer, noddingly expecting some kind of apology. They'd just been beaten, they'd been disrespected, we hadn't come the whole week, and he called them in, and they sort of came in closer and he said, I must apologize. I said that there was nothing to do in Hamilton, but I was wrong. There is something to do in Hamilton. And they came in a bit closer, and he says, you can win the Tri-Nations here. I don't think any of them even attended the press conference, but it was a special time. That 09 side was pretty potent.
Just intrigued to get your thoughts. We touched upon it in the lines, but that pivotal second test, and Scout was on here to give his version of the Luke Fitzgerald eye gouge. But from your perspective as a captain, once you realised what had happened, were you thinking, oh, for fuck's sake, Scout, what have you done now, mate?
The bugger up with that was because of, so from the first test, we really, when we felt that the British and Irish Lions were most vulnerable, when we were really getting quick ball playing phases. And so we had this massive intention during the week. Everything was quick ball, big ball presentations, extra numbers to the ruck, especially first 3 rucks. So we had a massive emphasis on playing quickly, and it's how we trained the whole week. And 30 seconds in, and we're a man down. Now we've gone a whole week preparing to play fast. Now all I'm saying is we're going to walk to the lines, we're going to walk to the kickoffs. We sort of got to slow things down. And look, it was only 10 minutes, but by the time Scotty got back on, we were in this unbelievably horrible rut. We just couldn't get back to where we wanted to be training-wise from a speed point of view. We were just stuck in that sort of playing for time, and it took a hell of a chat at halftime to sort of just explain why we were battling, because the Lions were on top of us. I mean, but at halftime we were sort of hanging on for dear life, and it's because we weren't doing what we were prepared to. So, look, what a test match! Probably the best test match I've been involved in, just from a sort of ding dong from one side to the other. Some tries that just you wouldn't ever believe were possible, and a kick at the end. Thank God it wasn't me having to kick that ball, but just an incredible test match.
Didn't you try to give the kick to someone else?
No, we contemplated France Stain. So I was actually walking towards France, and Mornay came to me and said, "This is my field," and I was all too happy to give it to him. He was as calm as anything. He really wanted it, and he was right. I mean, he'd grown up. He was the king of Loftus, and if he thought he could kick it, he kicked it. He made it with like 6-7 meters.
How good were the celebrations after winning the Lions series?
We got absolutely knotted. It was beautiful. Honestly, it was like, look, we made a very big point around celebrating wins, and so guys loved. I mean, we didn't really need to get out and go out on town. We loved a big team room, and we loved a box full of beers and fine meeting, and we had 3 guys at the top there, and you'd sort of have your turn to make a fine, and it was cool games, and guys would get nominated for songs and jokes, and we enjoyed it. I mean, it's difficult. You go out, you got a lot of other people, and you can't really relax. So we had some fantastic times, and then we were in the Palazzo actually in Joburg, and they gave us an entire floor, and it was just amazing. Cigars in the room, and champagne and beers, and it was a special night. All the wives and girlfriends, it was pretty cool. But I mean, you get to celebrate like that when you've felt the pain of losing test matches. We went 3 years before that, we lost 6 in a row. We were, we were on the verge of getting fired and dropped. And so when you win something substantial, you've got to enjoy it.
Well, you talked about routine earlier, and you said that's where you felt like you guys were hitting your straps in 2009, and you mentioned part of it was routine. Was part of routine having beers, win or lose, having beers after the game, and that was part of the routine, and making sure the boys stay close together?
We always had a kontiki after every test match, win or lose. Obviously, the ones where you lose, look, there's different kinds of losses. Like there's losses where you've been absolutely crap and you haven't stuck to the plan, and then there's losses where you've taken it. It's been a close game against a top side that was better you than the day. It's not as it's still not cool, but it's sort of more palatable. The ones where we sort of let things slip and we were our own worst enemies, those are short, little quick beer, reassess, chat about the week ahead, but always a circle, always a kontiki, always 1 or 2 fines, and then always meet to finish and wrap up and talk about the week ahead.
John, you're one of the few players who managed to actually go up against the Lions on 2 separate tours. In '97, you played against them for the Sharks, but didn't you upset the great Dai Young as well?
I tried not to, but I did. I was 19 years old, and it was an out of the ordinary game for the Sharks to play against the Lions. So there was you could keep your shirt. It was a once-off shirt. It had the emblem of the British Irish Lions on, and I'd literally made the team because 2 guys were injured, 2 guys were banned. I mean, there was no one left. I think that's the only reason why I actually got into the team, and I played it for about 8 minutes against Dai Young, who was the replacement prop for them. And he came into the change room like many guys did and asked for me. And I came out there and I said to him, I said, Dai, I'm not sure I'll ever play for this team again. I'm not sure I'll ever get a shirt. I've wanted this shirt for a long time. And I just don't know if I'll ever play again. I really can't swap you the shirt. It's the only one that I know that I'll be able to keep. And obviously he went back and explained the story, and Jason Leonard heard this sort of tale and in the shower and get called out. And Ian Mack was the coach, and he said, "Come here, boy." And Jason Leonard's there. I almost felt like I was being called to the headmaster's office. And so Jason Leonard is there, and he had folded up his shirts, gave it to me, and said, "I heard your story, and I want to give you my shirt with nothing in return and wish you all the very best for your career." I mean, that's just unbelievably special, yeah. And it made a massive impression on me. And look, I was fortunate enough. 3 years later, I started against England at hooker, and Jason was on the bench. And I actually took my jersey up to the Royal Box afterwards and handed him my jersey and said, "I owe you a jersey." And so, like, those are the cool things. I mean, we've been friends ever since, and I've done quite a bit with Jason after rugby. And I think that's really what sets rugby apart from most sports is that kind of camaraderie.
Amazing. Well, we're just finishing off now, John. I know you need to go. Just as a final sort of overall question, then we've got a couple of quick fire ones for you. But having played at 3 World Cups, where does leading the Springboks to a series victory against the Lions rank for you?
But I'd say almost on par. I mean, I always thought, I mean, you win the World Cup and that's sort of everything. But there's so many great Springboks that never got the opportunity to play against the Lions because it's a 12-year gap. So, and the pressure was immense because the team 12 years prior had lost. So we had this weight of all this time that we had to sort of. So, I mean, I enjoyed winning that series as much as I enjoyed winning the World Cup.
Okay, so finally, John, I've sort of seen bits and pieces of you putting together this sort of thing in different interviews. I'm not sure I could find a full 15. So can you fire through? And it's the first names that come into your mind. You don't even need to necessarily qualify them. The mystique will increase if you don't, I suppose. But the best ever Springbok 15 in the professional era.
I've got to go Osterrand. Yeah, he was my hero at school, and then I got to play in a World Cup with him. It was like incredible. And he's awesome, so it's a pretty easy one. Hooker, I'd probably say Malcolm Marx. He's pretty special in the professional era. Tight head, Frans Malherbe, absolute machine. Locks are tricky. It's really tricky because I feel like it's hard to compare Bakkies and Eben because they they had different rules to abide by, or shall I say the rules were less stringent for Buckies than they were for Eben. But I'd probably go. I'd go with Buckies and Victor. Marc Edwards also floats around there. He was a machine as well. Physical number 5, also a great manager of the lineup. But I'm going to probably stick to my boys and go Buckies and Victor. Flanks, yo. I would probably go Dwayne at 8, Skulk, Juan Smith, Farida Priya 9, 10. Nas Dwitzer wasn't in the professional era, but he was a special player. Probably go with Joel Stransky. 12, Jean de Villiers. 13, Lukanya Am. Cheslin Colby, Brian Abena, fullback. Andre Joubert.
Oh, not Purse. Not the great Purse. I like it.
I love Purse. He won us a lot of tests. It would be close, but the Rolls Royce was something special. And I've got Joel at 10, so he's kicking for us.
Oh yeah, fair.
This is something that we do on every pod. It's called the quick fire round. First names that come into your head. Best player you've played against.
John Lemmy.
Loosest teammate you've ever played with.
Young Carstens.
Biggest fight you've ever witnessed in training.
John Slade, Natal Sharks. He got into a fight almost every 2 weeks at training.
Worst enemy in rugby.
I'm not sure I've got many enemies. Bryce Lawrence. My wife just gave me the answer.
You can hear that from the background.
She's 100% right. I mean, I reckon 110 out of 111 tests, having a fair crack was a pretty good stat. So I only got done in once.
And 3 players in the cab with you for the ultimate piss up.
Sure. So many to choose from. Yeah, Butch James is up there. Jean de Villiers, great pub value. Dion Carstens, got to throw in Skulkberger because he's sort of, that you're going to be okay because he always is reasonably intact like towards there because he doesn't touch all that naughty stuff, the shorties. He always just goes beer. So he's always got a recollection of the evening. So you need someone to just give you a rundown the next day, and Skulk's that guy.
You need one of those guys. I'm certainly not that bloke.
Vern Cotter must have loved you.
Oh, man. Yeah, we got on all right, me and Ben.
And finally, current player or past player you've never met who could have been your best friend.
I got a feeling I'd get along really well with Frans Malherbe. He looks like a kind of guy who doesn't take life and fitness too seriously.
Yeah. Enjoys a good Brian a bit, I'm sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
John, well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. A huge thank you to John Smit and to Ryan and to Max, as always. And we'll see you all next week.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers, John.
Cheers, John.
Man.
Absolute pleasure. Awesome.